Landing on my heart. Chapter 29. 120 minutes later, the plane was ready to take off again. Since Fudu Airport has a World Aviation base, another co-pilot was quickly dispatched over. At 7 p.m., the flight returned to Jiangqing Airport. Captain Fan packed up and took Cecile Ruan to Louis Fu's office. "How are the people?" Louis Fu asked. Captain Fan stood in front of Louis Fu's desk and answered truthfully, "Acute cholecystitis has been operated and is now in stable condition." Cecile Ruan followed Captain Fan, her head slightly lowered, and listened to Captain Fan and Louis Fu negotiate the whole time, without saying a word. 10 minutes later, Bo Yang knocked on the door and came in, interrupting for a moment. He glanced at Cecile Ruan before he spoke. Cecile Ruan noticed his gaze and nodded at him, thinking it was a greeting. Bai Yang pursed his lips and walked over to Louis Fu. "Mr. Fu, Miss Jing is here." Miss Jing. Although he did not name names, Cecile Ruan subconsciously thought, it must be Jing Yuan. She looked down and picked her nails. "Why is she here?" Then Bai Yang glanced sideways at Cecile Ruan, then walked over to Louis Fu and whispered. Cecile Ruan, who was a few meters away from Louis Fu, could not hear Bai Yang's words, but Louis Fu nodded and said, "Got it, you let people arrange it." After Bai Yang left, Louis Fu seamlessly docked and continued to ask Captain Fan about the situation. In the end, Captain Fan said, "This time when the speed brake is used, the engine thrust has exceeded 66%, and I will take responsibility." Cecile Ruan jerked his head up at Captain Fan. What he means is that the QAR third-level incident caused by this diversion is counted on him. Louis Fu held a pen in his hand, pondered for a moment, seemed to not answer Captain Fan's words, and just said, "Well, I know the situation." At this end of the report, Cecile Ruan followed Captain Fan out. From beginning to end, Cecile Ruan and Louis Fu did not communicate at all, not even eye contact. Cecile Ruan really felt a little strange, and Qianer also pestered her house for a long time, working hard and complaining, and she was stunned for a long time without even a flame. At the moment, it seems that his flame has finally been directly strangled to death by her. But when I reached the door, I heard the person behind me call Cecile Ruan. Although it was called Cecile Ruan, Captain Fan subconsciously stopped, looked at Cecile Ruan, and then looked at Louis Fu. His eyes looked back and forth, and then walked away, and thoughtfully closed the door for them. Originally, Cecile Ruan thought it was okay for Louis Fu to suddenly stop her, but when Captain Fan did this, she somehow felt that nothing good had happened. She turned and asked, "What's wrong?" Louis Fu said while turning on the computer, "Today and tomorrow, you should have received a notice that the company is about to launch this year's Flight Academy National Tour recruitment, and you need to shoot a set of promotional videos, and the flight department has selected you to be photogenic." Cecile Ruan tilted his head and smiled happily. Yes. Photogenic promotional video, representing the corporate image, who was not happy. Immediately afterwards, Louis Fu said, "The photographer in charge is Jing Yuan." Cecile Ruan was momentarily surprised, but figured it out after a moment. Jing Yuan's photography focuses on portraits, and has a close relationship with the Fu family, so it is normal for her to be in charge of this shoot. Cecile Ruan asked, "What's wrong?" Louis Fu looked up, his eyes flashed slightly, and he said, "If you don't want to, I asked the flight department to change the photographer." "Why wouldn't I?" "If I don't want to, you can change the pilot, why change the photographer?" Cecile Ruan looked at him carefully and immediately understood. "Oh, you're starting again, aren't you? You still think I eat Jing Yuan's vinegar, right? This dog man." Cecile Ruan looked at Louis Fu with a puzzled look and asked, "Why don't you want to?" "I'd love to." Louis Fu looked into her eyes, and after confirmation, sighed softly, "Good." The promotional film that let Jing Yuan take charge of this time was promised by Louis Fu in front of Jing Yuan's father. "It's not a big deal, and I usually hire a similar photographer, so it's okay to sell Jingdong a face." But knowing that Cecile Ruan's relationship with Jing Yuan was after that, he usually didn't care about these small things, but after the project started, he specifically asked the person in charge of this part. As expected, the flight department chose Cecile Ruan to be on camera. He thought that if Cecile Ruan didn't want to have any contact with Jing Yuan, he could even replace Jing Yuan without believing it, and then make amends to Jingdong in other ways afterwards. In fact, he obviously has another solution, which is to let the flight department replace Cecile Ruan and choose a new pilot. Simple and hassle-free. But he didn't even think about this treatment from beginning to end. And the reason why he took the initiative to ask her in advance was that he didn't want to make claims on the basis of his own sentimentality. But there was an inexplicable urge to show performance in front of her. But Cecile Ruan did not seem to mind at all. Don't mind at all. The next morning, Cecile Ruan received a notice from the flight department to prepare for a promotional video for this year's admissions. Although the photographer is Jing Yuan, since the last time she was drunk, the knot in her heart has been evacuated a lot. Just take a picture, it's nothing. Only today the temperature reached a new high, and Cecile Ruan had to go out in uniform again. The shirt had to be neatly buttoned, the suit pants were airtight, and turning in the sun was like a little yellow fish turning over on a barbecue. At this time, it was not easy to take a taxi, and she walked from home to the door without a driver to answer the order. After a few minutes of waiting at the door, Cecile Ruan felt that she was already ripe and that those who liked raw could eat it directly. When Yan'an drove out of the parking lot, he saw Cecile Ruan standing in the doorway with a flying cap in his hand, looking irritable. He unknowingly stepped on the brakes and stopped about 10 meters away from Cecile Ruan. After a phone call last night, Yan'an never came to the famous courtier's apartment again. Anyway, others refuse clearly, and he only looks ugly when he entangles, even if he is occasionally irritable, but he also restrains his desire to take the initiative to contact. But at this moment, I saw her wearing a uniform for the first time. Her posture was tall, her skin was white and glowing in the sun, and she was inexplicably itchy. Maybe it's always the best that you can't get, or maybe it's unwilling. In short, it's hard for him to convince himself to just turn a blind eye at the moment. After stopping for 3 minutes, Yan'an slowly drove the car next to Cecile Ruan. Where to? Yan'an rolled down the window and asked. Cecile Ruan turned around and saw that it was Yan'an, and was stunned for a moment. President Yan. Well, dead hang. Cecile Ruan nodded. Get in the car, I'll drop by. Yan'an said, I'm going to the airport base and take you for a ride. Seeing that Cecile Ruan seemed to be hesitating, Yan'an grinned. Isn't it? Even I don't want to get into the car. It's really a ride for you, didn't we say to be friends? As a friend, you still call me in the evening. Cecile Ruan's heart did not show it, but just smiled and said, I took a taxi and will be there soon. Yan'an's smile disappeared, and he pressed the steering wheel impatiently, and the car driving up behind him honked his horn to urge. Don't grind, come up, what a big deal, the car behind you will get out of the car and beat someone. Cecile Ruan glanced up at the road and didn't even see a taxi. And 3 cars have already come out one after another. The sun was shining, the temperature was extremely hot, and she brushed her hair, and her fingertips were already covered with sweat. Okay, she pulled the car into the passenger seat. When she lowered her head to fasten her seatbelt, Yan'an glanced sideways at her, pursed her lips, wanted to say something, and finally did not say anything. The two arrived at the gate of the World Airlines in silence, and Yan'an slowly stopped. Cecile Ruan said thank you, but when she got out of the car, Yan'an stopped her. Cecile Ruan leaned back against the door. What's wrong? Yan'an spat out in the car, held it for a few seconds, and said, the weather is hot, pay attention to heat prevention. Cecile Ruan nodded and turned to walk inside. After the car behind her drove away, she glanced back. How does this banquet feel that it is not dead? Cecile Ruan arrived with several other young captains and co-pilots. This time when I saw Jing Yuan, she was dressed much lighter, with a short top and jeans, her hair tied up high, and she was shuttling through the studio with a tense face. She didn't have much work, but she had 3 assistants with her. Jing Yuan saw Cecile Ruan at a glance, and didn't care, but after walking a few steps, he suddenly retreated in front of her and said bluntly, have we seen it? Without waiting for Cecile Ruan to answer, she added, oh, I remember, we wanted to meet at the business terminal last month. Cecile Ruan nodded, yes. Jing Yuan looked Cecile Ruan up and down again, and said with a smile, you should be very photogenic, your company can be intimate, everyone is selected, directly help me save a lot of things. It sounds like she cares that the flight department directly brought people out for her and didn't give her the right to choose, so this compliment doesn't sound like that. The assistant she brought behind her suddenly poked and poked and poked, but no, it's not to see whose company it is, can it help you save trouble? Jing Yuan glared back at her, but scolded with a smile, shut up. Cecile Ruan understood what they were talking about, wasn't it just teasing Jing Yuan and Louis Fu? While saying that he had nothing to do with her, he tried his best to help. This dog man is really not human. Cecile Ruan pouted, not knowing what to say, so she stood quietly. Standing and standing, he began to scold Louis Fu again in his heart. This dog man is really not human, and 2 days ago he pretended to ask her if she wanted to change photographers. Hypocrisy, scumbags. Here, come and put on makeup. Jing Yuan's assistant suddenly waved at Cecile Ruan. Come over that beauty, let's let the girl go first. After putting on your makeup, it's time to start shooting. Cecile Ruan used to shoot World Airlines magazines when she was a flight attendant, and the photography team was also invited from outside, so she thought she was familiar with the process. But Jing Yuan is probably different from those who take pictures to eat, and she pointed for a long time just in makeup. One moment the eyeshadow was heavy, the next the eyebrows were too thick, and the other male pilots had already put on makeup and waited there, while Cecile Ruan sat in front of the makeup mirror for 2 hours. Isn't it just admissions publicity? As for making it look like a fashion magazine blockbuster. In the end, Cecile Ruan almost couldn't sit still, and Jing Yuan reluctantly nodded, so be it, SOSO. Cecile Ruan. It's not me who said, how come you little girl doesn't look like you at all? Virgos, right. By the time of shooting, the process was still not as smooth as Cecile Ruan had imagined. Just playing the light board, Jing Yuan let the assistants fiddle for a long time, and a posture was fine-tuned back and forth dozens of times, and Cecile Ruan's face was almost frozen. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, everyone thought it was almost over, but Jing Yuan turned off the camera and said, let's go out to the scene. Cecile Ruan. No, what's going on with this sister? Are you going to go out on location on this 38-degree day? Except for Cecile Ruan, the others were certainly not very happy. Just a few poses to shoot a few shots. What kind of exterior? Isn't there a post? Can that be the same? Jing Yuan seemed to have heard some joke. Can the blue sky and white clouds of P in the later stage be the same as the real scene? I never use a post P. Cecile Ruan was speechless, and for the 180th time she wanted to tell her that this was just a series of admissions posters, not a piece of art you brought to exhibit. The other pilots saw Jing Yuan looking pure and cute at first. His eyes lit up, and each of them was very attentive, and went up to talk to WeChat for a series of operations. But after being tortured for an afternoon, they also began to wander on the edge of anger. They didn't speak. Cecile Ruan didn't say anything. Jing Yuan looked at them, froze for half a minute, and said, you all don't want to, right? Got it, don't worry about women. The male pilots nodded irritably, pat pat. Jing Yuan looked at Cecile Ruan again, what about you? Cecile Ruan hugged his arms, looked at the blazing sun outside, frowned and nodded, okay. As long as it's not Louis Fu, no matter how much things do, I can't put up with you. Jing Yuan raised his chin, let's go then. The set of outdoor photos wasn't finished until the sun was about to set, and Cecile Ruan's uniform was almost wet and drank an entire bottle of mineral water in one go. And Jing Yuan flipped out the photo and said to himself, there is really no charm in posing. Cecile Ruan, this sister Virgo guardian, she didn't have much patience to stay here anymore. Seeing Jing Yuan looking through the photos intently, she probably didn't have the heart to say hello to them. So Cecile Ruan picked up her bag and prepared to leave. Just when passing behind Jing Yuan, I heard one of her assistants muttering, you are also too elaborate, it is a propaganda film, not an art blockbuster. Hey, there's someone who understands. Jing Yuan said, what's wrong with the propaganda video? This is what Brother Mingyu wants to watch, I have to do my best. Cecile Ruan. Her footsteps did not stop, but her brows squeezed tighter than her brows. After taking a deep breath, Cecile Ruan still couldn't adjust his mentality. Okay, Brother Mingyu, I still count this account on your head today. In the Spring River night box, the tip of Louis Fu's nose suddenly itched, his index finger touched his nose, and he coughed lightly. What's wrong? Is the air conditioning turned on too low? Zhu Dong said that he was about to let people in, and Louis Fu quickly stopped, it's okay. It's been so hot lately, I had a cold last week, and it was only good 2 days ago. Zhu Dong picked up the wine jug in front of him and poured it for himself and Louis Fu. You've been busy lately, don't break your body. Louis Fu held the wine glass, his gaze fell on it, but he seemed to be distracted. Hey, you're going to reform flight quality monitoring, do your dad and your brother know? Louis Fu nodded. Zhu Dong asked again, what did he say? Louis Fu squinted at the screen behind Zhu Dong and said nonchalantly, it's useless for them to object. Zhu Dong smiled, picked up the wine glass and took a sip, it seems that you have to fight alone. He raised his glass, brother, I support you in spirit. Seeing that Louis Fu was unmoved and not very interested in this topic, He changed the topic again. Guess who I saw at the gate of the World Airlines today? Louis Fu raised his eyes and did not answer. Yenin, that kid. Zhu Dong said, send that female fly from your company. He laughed as he spoke. You said that you tried hard to rob people with him. Anyway, they were all in Chao Ying's heart and Han, making both people toss. But then again, Yenin's words are also not credible. Say what not to chase and not chase. I said at the beginning, he can let go of the strange. When did he drink for a woman? That day I saw that he was wrong. Seeing that the person on the other side seemed to be also not interested in this topic, Zhu Dong was helpless and buttoned the table. What's going on with you today? Get up on the wrong side of the bed. Nope, Zhu Dong was too lazy to pay attention to him, or concentrated on eating and drinking bars. And Louis Fu lowered his eyes were dark, silent for a long time, and suddenly laughed, and took the wine glass in front of him. After Cecile Ruan's shooting, she first went home to take a shower, and then Si Xiaozhen drove to pick her up. The two went out to eat, and sent her back, and there was a lot of delay in coming and going, and it was 10 o'clock at night when she returned to the famous minister's apartment. The street lamps stretched her tired figure long, and when she reached the door, she encountered several families walking their dogs, standing under the eaves and watching the dogs play. Cecile Ruan couldn't get around for a while, and after standing under the street lamp for a while, seeing that the families didn't seem to be going for a short time, she was extremely embarrassed to speak up and ask them to pull the dog away. The dog owners still thought she was strange, so they stared at her and pulled their dogs away. All in Xinjiang Literature City, when Cecile Ruan passed by, the golden retriever rushed over excitedly, scaring her a little. Seeing that he was about to stumble, his shoulders were firmly supported. Cecile Ruan looked up, caught off guard by the bright lights of the hall, and caught Louis Fu's gaze. He seemed to be drinking, and Cecile Ruan smelled a smell of alcohol. The alcohol made his face whiter, not bloody, but his eyes reflected the light, faintly beating. Cecile Ruan subconsciously asked, "Why are you here?" After saying that, Cecile Ruan regretted it. He has a house upstairs and it's normal to be present here. Cecile Ruan pouted, feeling that she must have been dizzy from the sun today. When she turned her head, she saw Louis Fu's hand still on her. Cecile Ruan ducked aside. This action made Louis Fu's eyes sink and he spoke, "I'm waiting for you." The drunken voice was so deep but clear that Cecile Ruan couldn't convince himself that he had misheard. She looked at Louis Fu strangely. "What are you waiting for me for?" All in Xinjiang Literature City. Louis Fu stared at her for a moment, then suddenly turned his head to the side, letting the evening breeze blow into his face, and the shadowy light obscured some of the emotions in his eyes. "Where did you go today?" "It's okay not to mention this, and the mention of this Cecile Ruan makes me angry." His young sister tossed her for an afternoon in order to behave in front of him, and he was kind enough to ask her, "Where can I go, besides taking pictures of your photographer?" Louis Fu looked down at her. "You know I'm not talking about this." Cecile Ruan didn't understand. What else could it be if it wasn't this? "I'm just taking pictures today. I don't believe you ask someone." After speaking, she muttered again, "I already knew that people were for you, so I didn't mix it." His chin was suddenly lifted by his fingers, and Cecile Ruan had to look at him, but his expression was suffocated for 2 seconds by this sudden movement. "What are you doing? Are you with Yenin today?" All in Xinjiang Literature City. Yes. Cecile Ruan looked away, his chin detached from the touch of his fingertips, and he stepped back a little. "By the way, he dropped me off. What's wrong?" Louis Fu's fingers were empty, there was nowhere to place, but his fingertips were hot. He looked at Cecile Ruan, and the puzzlement in his eyes gradually became less depressed. Why can you still talk and laugh with him after all this, but avoid him?" Why, Cecile Ruan said, "I said he dropped me off." After speaking, Cecile Ruan had a moment of chagrin. Why did she have to explain so much to him? Cecile Ruan turned around and left. "Drink more, go to bed early, Mr. Fu." Louis Fu suddenly grabbed her wrist, a little strong, and his palm was very hot, which made Cecile Ruan inexplicably have a bad feeling. Men who drink too much are dangerous, and this has been the case since ancient times. Cecile Ruan glared back at him. "What the? Do you even care who I contact with? Aren't you managing a bit too much? You're my boss, not my dad." In Louis Fu's momentary silence, an idea suddenly crossed Cecile Ruan's mind. She slowly hooked the corners of her lips. "How? Mr. Fu, you don't want to be my boss anymore. With so much, you want to be my boyfriend." As she expected, she saw Louis Fu's gaze deepening and his Adam's apple rolling slightly. Before he could speak, she smiled again and said, "You might as well dream. With Cecile Ruan, there's never been a cooler moment." The smile on her lips deepened, and she threw away Louis Fu's hand and walked away. However, as soon as he took a step, his hand was held again. This time with more force, he directly pushed Cecile Ruan to the wall. The temperature of his palms gradually increased, and his breath brushed the tip of Cecile Ruan's nose. A little hot, and a little burning. "Really," he pressed, "don't you feel anything for me?" His eyes were deep, and when he looked at a person intently, it was as dark as the deep sea, and the dark tide was surging only in his eyes. The curve of the corners of Cecile Ruan's lips slowly disappeared. At this moment, Cecile Ruan felt his hand increase in force and grip tighter. "You're hesitating, aren't you?" Landing on my heart. Chapter 30. What am I hesitating about? I was just thinking about how to scold you. How to clear your head a little. Louis Fu laughed. "Is it? Usually, quite able to swear, why hesitate now?" I said I wasn't hesitant. I haven't been allowed to run out of thesaurus yet. Louis Fu's eyes told Cecile Ruan that he clearly didn't believe it. Cecile Ruan's anger was completely ignited, grabbed the bag and smashed it at Louis Fu, kicking him as he went. "What kind of narcissism are you? Who do you think you are? They all feel for you. I only see dogs and my heart pounds, you know." Louis Fu took 2 steps back, was beaten by her, pushed her away and said, "Okay. I know." Cecile Ruan was still unhappy and kicked Louis Fu in the calf. "Get it out of my way." Just after dawn, Cecile Ruan kicked her leg and suddenly opened her eyes. She was lying flat, staring at the ceiling, her chest still rising and falling violently. Oh, yes, why didn't she just hit him last night? Anyway, he won't believe anything she says, he will only stubbornly live in his own world, so simply tell him with actions. Instead of last night, after Louis Fu asked, she just denied it, just like the scene in the dream. For people like Louis Fu, there is no strength at all. He must not have believed her denial at that time, otherwise how could he let go of her hand without saying anything, let her rest early, and then turned away, not giving her another chance to continue denial. I hate that her brilliant brain is stuck at this time, and she went home and lay in bed and thought about how she scolded back one night, but there was no time machine to make her go back to that time, and no matter how much she thought about it, it would be useless. Cecile Ruan suddenly sat up and looked upstairs angrily, wondering if it was useless to beat him now. Picking up his phone and taking a look, it was only 5 o'clock, it was still early, and Cecile Ruan went back to sleep. But as soon as she closed her eyes, the picture of last night appeared in her mind. No, the more I think about it, the more angry I become, and I don't know if there is any remedy. Cecile Ruan sat up again and flipped through the address book with his phone. Last night, Si Xiaozhen worked the night shift, and she hadn't finished work at this point, so she couldn't call her. Then Bian Xian, she runs a bar and is often busy until the morning to go back to sleep. The phone was broadcast and no one answered until the end. Cecile Ruan played a second, third. It wasn't until the 5th time that the call was finally connected. On the other side, Bian Xian's irritable voice sounded. "Sister, what time is it? What time is it? If you don't tell me an emergency, we will cut it off." After being yelled at by Bian Xian for a while, Cecile Ruan felt guilty, and his momentum fell, covering his mobile phone and whispering, "You have slept." "Nonsense. I drank too much last night." "Oh, what's the matter? Say it, Cecile Ruan." "Oh. It was last night, Louis Fu, that dog man me off, how is it him again?" Bian Xian interrupted Cecile Ruan, "You disturbed my dreams in the morning for such a man. What if I brought the handsome guy home last night? Are you worthy of me?" Cecile Ruan has also just woken up, her brain is not awake, but she has completely lost sleep. "Alas, you talk with me, I'm dying of anger." There was a crackling voice on the other end of the phone. Bian Xian sat up, took a deep breath, and forcibly calmed his mind. "Let's talk about it." "Alas, it was last night, Louis Fu." Cecile Ruan was halfway through his speech when he was interrupted by Bian Xian. "Why is it him again, sister?" Bian Xian let out a long sigh helplessly, stretched out his legs and kicked away the quilt. "You have mentioned him too many times recently, my ears will hear the cocoon." Cecile Ruan was stunned. "Is there any? Didn't you?" Bian Xian simply sat up. "Come, let me tell you. I haven't seen this person, but I'm already very familiar with him. Okay, next time it's better for you to let him drink, I'll treat you. Anyway, everyone is so familiar." Cecile Ruan didn't answer, and Bian Xian continued, "Look at yourself, you are a person who hardly posts a circle of friends, and it has only been a few months since you came back, and the circle of friends you sent is all about him. Cecile Ruan, so that's okay. I'm scolding him. Bien chien, then I haven't seen you scold others. Come, I'll show you now. She said and really opened the circle of friends. The one who rejected WeChat is talking about him, and finally he didn't add it. The wild dog is talking about him, the song is also about him, oh, the breakfast one is not about him, but if you look at it, you sent 4, and 3 are about him. Cecile Ruan. The breakfast strip was also sent to him. Bien chien, in this way, I suggest you resign, let yourself go and let him go. Don't be angry with yourself all day long for a heart attack, okay? Cecile Ruan snorted, I just finished taking the fly, how can I quit? Through the phone, Bien chien scratched his head speechlessly. Now that there is no sleepiness, she has done something wrong to meet such a friend. Say, what happened last night? I'd rather hear me. Cecile Ruan was silent. She felt as if she had no more confidence. Forget it, you go on sleeping. Bien chien held his breath. Cecile Ruan, sooner or later, I will break off with you. After hanging up the phone, Cecile Ruan stared at the screen, clicked into his circle of friends, and deleted the content posted in the past few months. But after deleting it, she suddenly regretted it a little. How did it make her feel like she was weak-hearted? Can you restore it with one click? When Cecile Ruan was lying down again to catch up on sleep, a call came from the flight department. At this time, Cecile Ruan deeply realized Bien chien's mood just now. At this time, it is not good to call and designate, but it is very likely that the flight has suddenly changed and the co-pilot needs to be temporarily deployed. So Cecile Ruan didn't dare to sleep much even if he was sleepy, got up neatly, and went to the bathroom while answering the phone. But before she walked out of the room, she heard the people over there say that let her go to the World Airlines again this afternoon, and Jing Yuan wanted to take a few more photos. Cecile Ruan. She sat back on the bed. Why? What's wrong? Where did it shoot wrong? The person from the flight department said, Miss Jing said that the outdoor expressions are not very natural, and I want to take a supplementary photo, just one afternoon, it will not take up too much time. Cecile Ruan didn't want to go very much, and the flight department said, Miss Jing is more improving, so, can it work? Cecile Ruan looked out the window at the daylight and said, I don't think I'm good at shooting, let's change people. Substitution, of course, does not work. The flight department said that Cecile Ruan was finally persuaded, and by the way, there were also a few words of complaint. They also have a headache, they feel that Jing Yuan's requirements are too high, but there is no way, they think that Jing Yuan is the boss of the cooperative company, and Louis Fu personally promised to let her shoot, of course they will do their best to do her request. Cecile Ruan let out a soft, got it, I'm going out now. Fortunately, the temperature was not very high this morning. Cecile Ruan changed into his uniform again, and when he arrived at the World Airlines gate, the other pilots who were called in to take a makeup shot were also speechless. I really envy Lao Zhang, I had a flight today, and I escaped. I'm bored to death, I was going fishing with my girlfriend in the morning, and now my girlfriend is angry. Do you say that art is like this? Cecile Ruan thought to himself, yes. Jing Yuan is so tortoised, most of them are influenced by Dong Xian. She used to be like this, as if she had obsessive-compulsive disorder. If there was a slight flaw in a painting that no one else could see, she could throw it away. The group dragged reluctantly into it. Fortunately, today's makeup artist was also afraid that Jing Yuan would ask her to repeat the modification, and it took 120,000 thoughts to pass it once. Jing Yuan nodded, looked at several pilots, wanted to say something, and finally just opened her mouth and said that she would go to debug the equipment first. All in Jinjiang Literature City, but after a while, Jing Yuan's assistant came in with a few cups of cold drinks. The morning temperature is gradually rising, but the sun is not yet dazzling. Cecile Ruan and other makeup artists straightened her hair, then took the iced coffee that Jing Yuan bought and walked to the tarmac. The various equipment outside has been arranged, and Jing Yuan is standing in front of the camera fiddling with something. There was also a man standing next to her. Cecile Ruan squinted and looked at Louis Fu. He's pretty idle today. Cecile Ruan walked towards them. But the destination is not Louis Fu. She passed by them, threw the coffee in the trash, and when she turned around, saw Louis Fu looking towards her. Coming, this tone made the two of them seem to be very familiar. Obviously there was a disturbance last night. Cecile Ruan gave him a strange look and turned to walk towards the lightboard. But before he took 2 steps, he heard Jing Yuan behind him say, Look, these pictures are not very good looking. Who can look good in 38 degrees, sister? She even heard Louis Fu say, It's really not good. Cecile Ruan. She subconsciously touched her face. Isn't it pretty? Yesterday, after putting on makeup, she stood in front of the mirror for a long time. Obviously she looks very good. Cecile Ruan pondered this question all the way, did not look back at all, and did not notice that Jing Yuan's face changed slightly when she heard what Louis Fu said. She closed the LCD screen and looked up. Let's get started. Cecile Ruan stood in accordance with yesterday's position. Whenever he looked at the camera, Louis Fu stood next to Jing Yuan, his eyes looking at her from a distance. Louis Fu really felt that the previous ones were not very good, not at all as good as Cecile Ruan's usual looks. It was better to snap a few pictures casually. Just like now, she is standing under the plane, wearing a uniform, with a flight cap in the crook of her arm, tilting her head to the side, and at a glance, it is much better than the stiff smile in the photo. As if sensing his gaze lingering on her for a long time, Cecile Ruan turned around, glared at him, and then looked away unhappily. Louis Fu looked down and chuckled. What are you laughing at? Jing Yuan suddenly asked. What's wrong? Nope, Louis Fu looked back at her. The smile on his lips had not yet faded. You shoot, I'll just take a look. Jing Yuan nodded and said yes. When Cecile Ruan turned around, she saw Louis Fu smiling and talking to Jing Yuan. Still laughing so naturally. It's not you who dare to bask in the sun. Cecile Ruan became more and more uncomfortable, and her smile was extremely stiff. Jing Yuan poked his head from the camera and said, if you don't relax your facial muscles first, you're smiling too unnaturally now. Cecile Ruan really tried to relax, but to no avail. She suddenly glanced at Louis Fu. It's natural for him to laugh. You let him go, and I smiled naturally. Jing Yuan choked and hesitantly turned to look at Louis Fu. Is she talking about you? Louis Fu didn't answer her question, just glanced at Cecile Ruan, then turned and left. A few pilots next to him whispered, President Fu is watching there, and I am also stiff. But I dare not say that. The admiration is completely expressed. And Jing Yuan on the other side of the camera looked at Cecile Ruan twice. He pondered for a moment, but said nothing. All in Jinjiang Literature City after the shooting, it was already noon. Cecile Ruan did not go to the cafeteria with the pilots and planned to go home to eat. Louis Fu's car was parked right in front of the World Airlines. Cecile Ruan saw it from a distance, paused slightly, thought about it, and bypassed it. She just doesn't want to see Louis Fu right now. But the door was just a door, and she had only walked out a few steps, and the car followed her. Louis Fu rolled down the window, and a breath of cold air overflowed. Have you eaten? Cecile Ruan ignored him and kept walking. The car continued to follow. Cecile Ruan stopped helplessly. What are you following me for? Louis Fu's face remained unchanged. He got out of the car and walked to the car, and pulled the car door. Get in the car, I'll drop you off. Are you idle? Louis Fu raised his hand and glanced at his watch. It's not very idle, so you hurry up and get in the car. No thanks. Cecile Ruan ignored him and continued walking. Louis Fu followed without hurry, and said behind her, It's so hot, are you going to walk back like this? All in Jinjiang Literature City, I can take a taxi myself. It's peak time now. Then I can wait. What are you stubborn? Louis Fu said, How can I send you along the way, but I can't. Cecile Ruan. He was so tricky at this angle that I didn't know how to answer. You're in a bad mood today. Cecile Ruan turned around and stood 3 steps away from him. Yes, don't mess with me if you know I'm in a bad mood. Did I mess with you? I didn't even talk to you today. Cecile Ruan exhaled. You stand there and just breathing makes me angry. After that, Cecile Ruan continued walking. But she felt like Louis Fu was still following her. Cecile Ruan turned around. What are you doing again? I said it all last night. I don't feel anything for you. Louis Fu nodded. I know you're still pestering me. Without waiting for Cecile Ruan to speak, Louis Fu said, So what are you mad at me today? That's right. What am I mad at him? Cecile Ruan was stunned for a moment, looked up and saw a smile in Louis Fu's eyes, and suddenly reacted. Dogman takes me to the beat.
Welcome to Storyverse. If you have any novels you'd like to see or stories you'd like to share, feel free to leave us a comment or send us a private message. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join our community of avid readers and romance enthusiasts.
Landing on My Heart Chapter 31. Cars speeding up the viaduct raise dust, and the sun reflected through the windows is particularly dazzling. There is a faint and vague fragrance in the car. Cecile Ruan sat quietly in the passenger seat, her distant mind attracted by the scent. She sniffed lightly, a little curious about where this smell came from. There was no incense in front of the saddle, nothing in the rearview mirror, and no storage in the locker next to the block. Her gaze gradually searched for the driver's seat, and Louis Fu stopped at the red light and looked towards her. Cecile Ruan. With a pair of eyes, she looked away and looked ahead indifferently. She began to think about why she was sitting in his passenger seat. It must have been dizzy by the sun, by Louis Fu. This man was so shameless that he blocked her at the gate of the World Airlines, and people came and went at noon, and she didn't get in the car, and he didn't leave, so he watched the employees watch. He's a director, a future president, can you make a face? And lo and behold, if she hadn't gotten in the car today, he would probably have been able to follow her all the way home. I'm not angry with you today. Cecile Ruan was sullen for a long time, and decided to take the initiative to explain the most critical question. Otherwise Louis Fu would have to think more. It's too hot, I'm irritable, whoever comes I have this temper. Louis Fu let out a faint "oh." Cecile Ruan frowned at him, really? Louis Fu still didn't have any expression on his face. Well, I see. But why did Cecile Ruan not believe him? What's going on with this guy, who likes people so much to be angry with him? Cecile Ruan gasped and looked at him, but he didn't react. After holding himself back for a long time, and not putting a single fart in the other party, Cecile Ruan chose to shut up. She knew that she would open her mouth again at this time, and maybe he would take her into the pit again. Tired, really tired. There was silence in the car for a long time, and Louis Fu suddenly asked, "What are you thinking?" Cecile Ruan said expressionlessly, "Oh, I'm trying to get a driver's license as soon as possible, so as not to always be dragged to the co-pilot because you don't have a car." Louis Fu couldn't hear her. Get a driver's license and drive yourself, lest he forcibly pester her for this reason. I don't know if she had this idea when she got into Yenen's car. He sneered, Cecile Ruan, how bad am I than Yenen? Cecile Ruan looked at him inexplicably. What are you suddenly mentioning him for? Louis Fu narrowed his eyes. He really didn't want to ask that kind of question. He never even thought to compare himself to Yenen. But they have also been rejected. How can you talk to him calmly and let him drive you? But I can't. He turned to look at Cecile Ruan. How am I different from him? That's certainly different. The sentence almost blurted out, but fortunately Cecile Ruan braked the car temporarily. But what's different? Louis Fu would definitely ask her, but she thought about it for a while and didn't know how to answer. It's just different anyway. Stopping at a red light, Louis Fu pulled over and looked straight at Cecile Ruan, waiting for her to say what she had to say. Cecile Ruan tugged at the corners of his mouth and said, "You're more handsome than him, are you comfortable?" Louis Fu didn't react again, slowly withdrew his gaze, the green light in front of him came on, and he stepped on the accelerator. The car sped out, the scene in front of him quickly receded, and silence returned to the car. However, just when Cecile Ruan thought that her obviously perfunctory answer had let the topic pass, she heard him say softly, "Oh, so you are afraid that you will be moved." Fu bright. The good around him seems to have reached the limit of patience again, and it will explode if you poke it again. When he said this, he knew that she would be angry, but Louis Fu heard her reaction, and his heart overflowed with an inexplicable joy. He ticked the corners of his lips lightly and stopped talking. 10 minutes later, the car slowly stopped downstairs. Cecile Ruan didn't thank Louis Fu when she got out of the car, but he didn't care, he had to take her home anyway. Louis Fu sat in the car and watched her stride into the hall until the person disappeared into the elevator. The phone rang suddenly. Louis Fu glanced at it. It was a message from Jing Yuan, asking him if he wanted to see the photos taken today. A picture of Cecile Ruan. Louis Fu replied, "Okay." After receiving this news, Jing Yuan locked himself in a dark room. Although film cameras have been discontinued one after another, Jing Yuan still recognizes the color restoration and image clarity of film cameras, so the darkroom is still a sacred place in her heart. She has high requirements for photography, but the conditions at home are good, and she can withstand her casual manufacturing, and the lenses at home are piled up like mountains. And her grades are also good. When she was 13 years old, her family opened a photography exhibition for her. She studied abroad at the age of 15, and she took a lot of works in 7 years, including many awards. Her father was also proud of her, and whenever people took out her achievements, and friends often asked her to take pictures of herself, her eyes were full of adoration. Even the teacher hardly criticized her work. The self-confidence she has cultivated since childhood has made her more and more strict with her work. Even if this time it is only a recruitment promotional film, she will shoot it as an art film. But what did Louis Fu say? It's really not good. It has been so long since Jing Yuan thought of this sentence, and it was still uncomfortable to think of this sentence. I say that I myself did not shoot very well is modest, and you say that I did not shoot very well, that is blindness. The more she thought about it, the more unconvinced she became, and the soothing music in the darkroom could not ease her mood. When the photo washed out, she admired it alone for a long time. You have never seen such artistic promotional photos in our world. Absolutely nothing. After sending the scanned high-definition photos to Bai Yang's mailbox, Jing Yuan quietly waited for Louis Fu's evaluation. However, half an hour passed and the other party did not respond. Jing Yuan couldn't help but send another message and asked, "Brother Mingyu, have you seen it?" Louis Fu had just returned to World Airlines. On the table is the list of negative applications of flight data that has just been drafted, which is his most important work recently. After seeing Jing Yuan's news, Louis Fu replied, "Wait, busy," and went to the conference room. At the first meeting on reforming flight quality control, the shareholders' representatives at the bottom were all opposed. The meeting lasted 7 hours. When Louis Fu walked out of the conference room, it was already dark and the street lights outside the window were all on. Bai Yang followed behind and said, "Just now Fu Dong called to inquire about today's meeting, now call back." "No rush." Louis Fu walked towards his office. "You don't have to report to him until the results come out." After sitting in the office, Louis Fu took off his coat, put his arms on the backrest, and lazily looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the neon lights. After the various quarrels that filled his mind slowly dissipated, Louis Fu rubbed his brow bone and suddenly remembered something. "Bai Yang, did Miss Jing send a new photo today?" Bai Yang nodded and said, "It has been sent over a long time ago, do you want to see it now?" Louis Fu was. The photo sent by Jing Yuan was very large, and Bai Yang took a long time to decompress. While waiting, he dragged his chin to look at the progress bar, his eyes seemed to be closed. "I really want to tell Miss Jing that I can send Cecile Ruan's photo. Anyway, their daily manager Fu has no energy to look at other people's." 20 minutes later, Bai Yang released a photo sent by Jing Yuan on the display screen in his office. Louis Fu sat on the sofa in a relaxed posture, holding the remote control, flipped through a few photos that he didn't want to see, then jumped directly to the catalog and directly selected Cecile Ruan's photos. Bai Yang thought expressionlessly on the side, "Sure enough." I don't know how long it took. When Bai Yang was about to settle in place, Louis Fu casually slid past other photos. But seconds later, he flipped back to Cecile Ruan's photo. Bo Yang turned around and quietly hit Hatch, wanting to leave work. All in Jinjiang Literature City, he stepped forward and said, "Do you need me to send these photos to your phone?" All in Jinjiang Literature City. Louis Fu raised his gaze and stared straight at Bai Yan. Bai Yang suddenly sobered up, and there was no sleepiness. However, the next second, Louis Fu heard a word. "Good." At the same time, Louis Fu opened his mobile phone, and dozens of messages poured in instantly. He skimmed through it roughly, ignoring it automatically when he didn't matter, but he was a little curious when he saw Jing Yuan sending him several messages in a row. 6 hours ago. Have you seen it? What do you think? 4 hours ago. Brother Mingyu. 2 hours ago. President Fu. Have you seen it? 10 minutes ago. Mr. Fu, just take a look, you can also give an opinion, smile. Louis Fu saw that she was so anxious, so he recalled the photos again. The picture selected, the shooting angle, and the picture structure are very distinctive, and the lighting is also clever. But the delicacy is more than enough, and the atmosphere is not enough in an instant. To sum up, it is a very delicate set of portrait works, but as a promotional film, it puts the cart before the horse. But this is not important, the enrollment publicity is just that. It doesn't matter if you take it to Jing Yuan to practice your hands. Louis Fu got up with his coat and prepared to go home, and at the same time gave Jing Yuan a simple reply of 2 words. "Okay." This message sank into the sea, and Jing Yuan did not reply again. When getting into the car, the driver asked Louis Fu where to go back. Louis Fu closed his eyes. Mingchen apartment. The night is thick, the lights are bright, the windows are closed, and the interior is quiet and cool. Louis Fu untied his tie and slept for a while, opening his eyes naturally when he was about to arrive at the famous courtier's apartment. He tilted his head slightly, and when he looked out the window, he suddenly said, "Stop." Cecile Ruan moved in for a few months, but he didn't get a good understanding of the neighborhood until tonight when he wanted to cook his own food, opened the map to find the supermarket, and found that there was a pedestrian street 2 or 3 kilometers away. She took a shower and walked over slowly, but before anyone entered the supermarket, she saw a long queue in front of a flower armor fan store. Walking over there, the scent hooked. Cecile Ruan unknowingly stopped and stood at the back of the line. There are such fragrant flower armor fans, what else do you cook? All in Xinjiang Literature City. She waited in line for almost 20 minutes before the line moved less than 2 meters, and she looked on tiptoe to see that the store was preparing takeout again. Cecile Ruan touched her stomach and began to think about whether to forget it, and she would starve to death if she waited. Just then, the phone rang. She opened it and saw that it was a message from Louis Fu. Louis Fu, have dinner together. As soon as his name appeared, it reminded me of the morning in the car. Cecile Ruan still feels wrong in retrospect. Why she couldn't tell how he and Yenin were different. She also wondered why she just couldn't talk to Louis Fu calmly. Even Louis Fu said, "Are you afraid you're tempted?" She found herself genuinely scared. The feeling was so irritating that she didn't want to feel that atmosphere at all. Cecile Ruan, no, I've eaten. After returning the message, Cecile Ruan exhaled. But then came his news again. Louis Fu, I'm behind you. Cecile Ruan's breathing tightened sharply, and his back instantly straightened. How is this man haunted? Without looking back, Cecile Ruan simply looked down and typed. Cecile Ruan, behind me is the pig farm. The perception at this time is particularly sensitive, and Cecile Ruan feels that someone behind her is approaching her. But she never looked back. It wasn't until a few seconds later that an ant passed by her with a trash can and returned to the store. Louis Fu didn't come over, but his news did. Louis Fu, I really want to raise pigs lately. Cecile Ruan. Landing on my heart. Chapter 32. The stove in front of the door rumbled, the hot stone pot burst into flames, and the boiling fragrance filled the small storefront. The waiter neatly brought up a leftover bowl to the table, grabbed a greasy rag and quickly wiped the table. What to eat? Cecile Ruan glanced at the menu on the wall and said, sour and spicy flower nail fans, add more flower armor. The waiter looked at Louis Fu again, but his voice was not so crisp. What about you? Louis Fu said lightly, just like her. Okay, the waiter looked up and yelled at the stove, too hot and sour nails. Ever since Louis Fu walked in, Cecile Ruan could feel the eyes around her gradually focus on him. The small shop is noisy and crowded, full of fireworks, while Louis Fu has a refined temperament and a nonchalant face, which is incompatible with the atmosphere here. He didn't look like a person in such a place at all, but rather like the style of a movie playing on a TV in the corner of the store. Cecile Ruan didn't expect him to actually come in. 10 minutes ago, Cecile Ruan, who was caught lying and was caught, looked at Louis Fu, who walked to her side with a calm expression but was very embarrassed, and listened to him ask, didn't you eat? All in Xinjiang Literature City. Cecile Ruan said stiffly, add meals. Louis Fu looked at the environment inside the store and asked, would you like to change places? Cecile Ruan thought to herself, how can I change after waiting in line for so long? And now even Michelin restaurants can't pull her away from the magic of flower armor fans. No, I just want to eat here. After speaking, she wanted to deliberately ask, President Fu, do you want to eat together? A bowl of something for $12. How could Louis Fu eat it? Moreover, the environment here. It's not much clean anyway. However, he nodded, well, good. So he stood quietly next to Cecile Ruan for 10 minutes, and when the shop called, he walked in. Cecile Ruan felt like he was digging holes for himself again. What she can eat, why can't Louis Fu eat it? Who is nobler than whom or what? But when the 2 bowls of steaming flower armor fans were served, they smelled carefully, and the fishy smell of flower armor and the sour smell of vinegar were very nasal. Cecile Ruan saw Louis Fu on the other side, frowning visibly. Sure enough, I still couldn't get my mouth down. Cecile Ruan directly picked up the small bowl, filled it with some soup, and took a sip, deliberately showing an expression of great pleasure. It's delicious. She looked at Louis Fu and raised her eyebrows at him. Mr. Fu, move the chopsticks, it's delicious. She didn't believe Louis Fu could eat it. Sure enough, although Louis Fu was sitting, he was half a meter away from the table, wiped the spoon with a paper towel, and also followed the example of Cecile Ruan and served a small bowl of soup. But when he picked up the bowl, he still couldn't take a bite. The whole bowl is filled with a bad smell of spices. Forget it, what is the oil floating on it? He raised his eyes to meet Cecile Ruan's sly gaze. Putting down the bowl, he decided to change the subject. In November, the company will start a national tour of flight cadet recruitment. Do you want to go? What am I going to do? Preach. Cecile Ruan let out an "oh" and picked out a flower armor to eat. I'm just a co-pilot, and the captain will go to the preaching. It's okay. Louis Fu said, there are female pilots who will attract more girls to sign up. Cecile Ruan suddenly looked up and asked, "Why, you still want to recruit some more female pilots? All in Xinjiang Literature City, I never thought about the gender of the pilot." His gaze slowly lingered on Cecile Ruan's face, and there was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. "Of course, if it's a female pilot like you, I don't mind recruiting a few more." Cecile Ruan smiled. "Want to get the moon first near the water floor, President Fu?" Louis Fu didn't speak, pushing a bottle from the table in front of Cecile Ruan. "What for? You add more vinegar. With such a rich imagination, why don't you write novels?" Cecile Ruan put the vinegar back in its place. "I'm sorry, I'm never jealous, I vomit when I eat it." Louis Fu nodded nonchalantly, but still didn't mean to move the chopsticks. Cecile Ruan looked at him for a few seconds, took out the disinfectant wipes from his bag, carefully wiped a pair of chopsticks, and handed them to Louis Fu. "President Fu, eat." Louis Fu took the chopsticks, paused, and said, "I don't eat flower armor. This is simple, Xiao Ruan is at your service." Cecile Ruan smiled and pulled his bowl over, carefully picking up the flower armor. Although he knew that he had bad intentions, Louis Fu smiled when he saw her hanging eyelashes fluttering, the tip of her nose covered with a little sweat, and the corners of her mouth curved. A few minutes later, all the armor in Louis Fu's bowl ran to Cecile Ruan's bowl. Cecile Ruan pushed the bowl back and looked at him with a smile. "Okay." Louis Fu sighed, "I don't eat fans either." "Louis Fu, you're looking for fault, aren't you?" "I vomit when I eat vermicelli." "Good, good." Cecile Ruan clapped. "I don't know, I thought I was accompanying the emperor to dinner." Until Cecile Ruan finished eating the flower armor fans in front of him, Louis Fu did not move his chopsticks. But she put down her chopsticks and went to pay. A total of 36 pieces, Louis Fu gave the boss 100. "No need to look for it. Hee, you eat well." The boss borrowed money and smiled, but he thought that rich people would really find fun. Louis Fu turned around and waved at Cecile Ruan. Gone. Cecile Ruan was a little probable, and slowly wiped his mouth, before slowly getting up. At this time, the pedestrian street is still very lively, pedestrians come and go, but the footsteps are very leisurely. The colorful neon lights and the sound of loud music mingle, and the girls from street stalls shouting, slowing down the passage of time. "How much was it just now?" Cecile Ruan asked. "You want to give me money?" "Yes, no need." Louis Fu continued walking. Cecile Ruan took a step behind and pouted behind him. The fan of Huajia, who paid dozens of dollars, was told by him with a sense of pretense that invited a full table but did not care. But the next second, I heard him say with a smile, "You all said that I am from a pig farm. So where can I collect your money?" Cecile Ruan held his breath in place. 2 seconds later, she still didn't hold back. "Fu bright." Louis Fu turned around and said lightly, "What's wrong?" "Not full." Cecile Ruan doesn't know how she managed to resist not killing Louis Fu on the street. "Is it cultivation? Is it a tutor?" No, it was the rule of law and a harmonious society that limited her. Cecile Ruan's steps were so fast that she almost trotted up, but Louis Fu caught up with her easily. "Okay, stop teasing you." He grabbed Cecile Ruan's wrist. "Seriously, are you going to tour admissions? Launch on November 11th, the first stop is your alma mater." Cecile Ruan was so angry that he didn't notice him uttering the words alma mater. "Don't go. 11, I just want to take advantage of the discount to buy your life." Oh, Louis Fu's expression was still flat, but the words that came out were unbearable. "You want me to give you my life?" Too fast. Cecile Ruan, how can there be such a shameless person in the world? Cecile Ruan, did Mua's mother neglect to pinch his face? Cecile Ruan, did you accidentally forget to develop a face when the embryo was developing? Cecile Ruan sent out a series of complaints, and Bien Xian returned a yawning emoji. "Bien Xian, Louis Fu again." Cecile Ruan's typing hand paused. There was just a line in the edit box, "Louis Fu is a big fool." She deleted the line expressionlessly. Cecile Ruan, no, it's a great idiot to watch the drama. Bien Xian, oh, I thought it was your family Fu again. Cecile Ruan, Bien Xian, otherwise, who else can make you angry like this? Cecile Ruan, you. Greet the guest to go. 4 days later, Cecile Ruan's flight time reached the upper limit, and she rested as usual, and she made an appointment in advance for Si Xiaozhen to go to the suburban town to play, and Si Xiaozhen was the most active about this kind of thing, and booked a hotel in advance. However, while Cecile Ruan was preparing his things, he received another message from the flight department. "Tomorrow morning regular meeting and afternoon training." Okay, live life, born is to work. Cecile Ruan went to the World Airlines with his destiny written all over his body. She greeted her colleagues around her while she said hello to her colleagues. All in Xinjiang Literature City, before his mouth closed, the people around him suddenly became quieter. Cecile Ruan looked over intuitively, and the group hurried towards the elevator, led by Louis Fu. The others seemed to fade in an instant, and Cecile Ruan stared at Louis Fu, thinking that you must not come and mess with me, or I really can't guarantee that I will give you face in the company. Half a minute later, the elevator doors closed, and the atmosphere around them relaxed again. Well, you saved your life today, thanks to your habit of not squinting, you know. When I arrived at the conference room, the flight manager was delayed. Cecile Ruan sat by the window, holding her temples and looking out the window to do eye exercises. This view came to Xingyuan. Cecile Ruan blinked and sobered up a little. Why is she here? She had the same questions as Louis Fu. He stood by the window and made a call, and when he retracted his gaze, he caught a glimpse of Xingyuan, who was standing in the hangar downstairs. Why is she here? Bai Yang stepped forward and said, "This year, the company's 30th anniversary and the World Air Show have begun preparations, and she is a photographer. This year's World Airlines 30th anniversary celebration and the World Air Show collision period will be unified preparation, coupled with the ACJ-31 new aircraft listed. This event is not small. The propaganda department has divided a special group from the middle of the year to prepare." That doesn't mean, however, that he doesn't care about the rest of the propaganda work. World Airlines has always had a regular cooperative photography team and has never submitted unsatisfactory answers for many years, which makes World Airlines' annual promotional pictures very magnificent and unique in various image exhibitions. After the last admissions promotional photo, Louis Fu thought that the publicity department had become clear that Xingyuan's style was not suitable for the aviation industry. But even so, they even advocated a change of photography team. Louis Fu half squinted, raised his hand to untie the cuffs on his shirt and threw them on the table. With a snap, Bai raised his eyebrows and did not frown. Having worked with Louis Fu for 2 years, he knew it was a sign of extreme anger. Call the manager of the publicity department. At 6 o'clock in the afternoon, Cecile Ruan, who had finished his training, walked out rubbing his shoulders. A day in the company is really more tiring than a day in the cockpit. A few colleagues with her asked her to have dinner together in the evening, and she agreed, but before that, she had to go to the bathroom. The 16th floor is the flight department, which is less crowded than other departments, and the toilets are rarely visited. Cecile Ruan pushed the door in while looking at her phone, and before she could pass the washstand, she heard an angry female voice from a cubicle. "Fu Bright. Ah yes. Sickness, is it? Who is it? Who is it?" Cecile Ruan pricked up her ears and wondered who it was. On Louis Fu's turf. Told a big truth. Landing on my heart. Chapter 33. This bathroom has only 2 cubicles, one of which has the door open and no one, and the other is the one who just cursed. Just as Cecile Ruan was hesitating whether to go to the bathroom or wash his hands first, the cubicle was suddenly pushed away from the inside. A woman came out angrily, stepped over to the sink, held her mobile phone and washed her hands and said, Don't talk for him, I'll tell you, it's much more than that, forget it, I'm still in the World Airlines, I'll talk to you when you come out and drink with me at night." What's going on with you? You pushed it. Does it have to be today? Okay, hang. At the same time as speaking, she also finished washing her hands, half leaned over to get a tissue, but accidentally let the phone drop to the floor. Click, it sounds miserable. Probably when people are not going well, what to do is difficult. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, and even wanted to step on the phone. Cecile Ruan was also stunned. It was actually Xingyuan. Xingyuan finally bent down to pick up the phone, and when she stood up, Cecile Ruan had already handed her a tissue. She was also stunned when she saw Cecile Ruan, and did not go to pick up the tissue for a long time. Who is not stiffer than anyone at this time? Cecile Ruan couldn't even think that the person who scolded Louis Fu in the cubicle was Xingyuan. And Xingyuan must also regret that he can't wait to complain about the boss in the World Airlines, and the result is heard by other employees. A subtle embarrassment spread between the two, invisibly covering the whole body. Cecile Ruan took the lead in breaking the deadlock, casually stuffing a tissue into Zhang's hand. "The ground is dirty, wipe it." "Thank you." While wiping her mobile phone, Xingyuan pretended to be careless and said, "Your blush is very good looking, what brand and what color?" "Hot." Oh, who would have thought that Louis Fu was a prince of an airline, with a height of 187 and a face on the aesthetic point of contemporary women, but he overturned the full Han seat that God rewarded him with his own strength. As Louis Fu's subordinate, as a humble employee who lives on his wallet, Cecile Ruan couldn't help but laugh at the thought of this. Jing Yuan, who had already taken a step out of the bathroom, suddenly turned around, a little embarrassed. What are you laughing at? How was it caught again? Cecile Ruan was a little depressed, but the funny was still more than depressed, and she clenched her fist against the corner of her mouth, trying to hide her smile. Did I smile? Jing Yuan is not embarrassed now, but angry. Did you hear that? Cecile Ruan smiled and nodded. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but you were too loud. Jing Yuan looked at Cecile Ruan with puffing eyes, and Cecile Ruan wanted to laugh more and more. I thought who was so daring to scold us President Fu in the World Airlines. It turned out to be you. I thought you liked him before. Who would like this kind of megalomaniac? All in Xinjiang Literature City. Cecile Ruan squinted at her. So. Jing Yuan was seen by her lack of confidence, and stubbornly raised her chin. Okay, I liked him a little before, but now it's impossible. Who would like such a neuropathy? After that, she paused, as if out of a woman's instincts, and she tilted her head to look at Cecile Ruan. Do you like him? The smile on Cecile Ruan's face disappeared in an instant, and he sneered, who likes his narcissism? Am I crazy? The words fell, and the small bathroom was strangely silent for a moment. Jing Yuan actually heard a bit of disgust from Cecile Ruan's words. She looked at Cecile Ruan curiously and asked, really fake? Cecile Ruan felt that he really talked a lot today, and there was no need to explain it to Jing Yuan, so he turned around and left. Jing Yuan grabbed her. It's rare to meet a person who hates Louis Fu. Let's go and drink together at night. Nope, right. Let's go, I'll treat you. No, I have an appointment at night. What covenant? Does it matter? If it's not important, push it. It seems that this sister is still a pigeon. But Cecile Ruan did hesitate at this moment. On the one hand, she has always been a little unclear about Jing Yuan's emotions, and her desire to explore is always uncontrolled. On the other hand, she was really curious about how Louis Fu had offended this young lady like this. I don't know if it's the same as with her. You might as well dream. The moment he approached Bian Xian's bar, Cecile Ruan was still in infinite confusion. She also wanted to break her head, but she didn't expect that she would actually sit at a table with Jing Yuan and drink, and the informant was Louis Fu. The wine in front of Jing Yuan has gone down more than half, while Cecile Ruan's juice has not yet taken 2 sips. All in Xinjiang Literature City. Obviously, someone from your World Airlines called and invited me to shoot. I was ready for everything, and I originally pushed off an exhibition recently, but now he said to replace me. Why? It's not that I'm begging to come and shoot them, I'm busy. And what is the relationship between the two of us? He doesn't even give me this bit of face. Does he hit me in the face or my father's face? I have never suffered such grievances since I was a child. Hearing the movement here, Bian Xian took the opportunity to deliver snacks and winked at Cecile Ruan. Cecile Ruan coughed lightly. I'll go to the bathroom first. Jing Yuan waved his hand in annoyance. Go back quickly, I am panicked in my heart. Oh, Cecile Ruan winked at Bian Xian, and the two went to the toilet together. Who, your friend? How come I haven't seen it? Jing Yuan. Sounds familiar. Bian Xian plucked his ears and suddenly said in surprise, why did you get mixed up with her? This reason was really difficult to say. Cecile Ruan gritted his back teeth for a long time before saying, Fu. Before the next 2 words could be spoken, they were cut off by Bian Xian. This can also be related to Louis Fu. Cecile Ruan looked at her with half-wide eyes. She was the one in charge of taking pictures of me, and I got to know her. Oh, yes. Bian Xian smiled. I thought it was because of you, President Fu again. Cecile Ruan wanted to leave, but Bian Xian grabbed her again. But does she know who you are? Based on these meetings, Cecile Ruan concluded that she did not know. Definitely don't know. This made Bian Xian twist in his heart. You have never seen that side. Cecile Ruan shook his head. Bian Xian thought to herself, it seems that her mother has not mentioned it over there. You still haven't had any contact with your mother? All in Xinjiang Literature City expecting an affirmative answer, Cecile Ruan said, not either. She leaned against the wall, looked up and exhaled, she's been sending me money. This time, without waiting for Bian Xian to ask, Cecile Ruan took the initiative to say, she has been sending me money all these years, and she will receive it once in 2 or 3 months. How much? Cecile Ruan gave her a blank look. Did the money go away? I didn't pay attention. 2 or 3 million. Bien Xian gasped, this is excessive, you rich woman. The year before last, I asked you to borrow money to turn around, and you still said no. I really didn't. Cecile Ruan said, I haven't touched the money my mom gave me. No, why are you? Bien Xian has long wanted to ask this question. How many families and parents are divorced? This is very normal. Your parents seem to have broken up peacefully, right? I didn't tear my face, and I got divorced for 4 years before remarrying, which is nothing, right? Why do you mind so much? Cecile Ruan looked up at the ceiling, his eyes foggy, unable to read emotions. After waiting for a while, she only shook her head and said, don't talk about this, I'll go over. Bien Xian was curious, but helpless, about this matter. Cecile Ruan did not want to say. No one could pry her mouth. After sitting down, Cecile Ruan continued the topic of asking, why replaced you? He said I didn't have the right style. Cecile Ruan muttered, he's a student of management, can he understand this? Yes, yes, yes. Jing Yuan slapped his palm on the table several times in a row. I called him and asked, what did he say was too delicate and not atmospheric? What was he doing? No one has ever said that to me. I won an award for the great animal migration. I went to Africa last year. Isn't it atmospheric? He doesn't know photography at all. Cecile Ruan touched his chin, and Jing Yuan continued, and the last time I took a photo for you, the money I gave was not enough to buy a bag, but he said that I didn't take a good shot. As he listened, Cecile Ruan's cell phone rang, a message from Louis Fu. Louis Fu, you haven't come home yet. Cecile Ruan nodded yes as she quickly replied to Louis Fu. Also, that time I took his hitchhiker to Spain, and ignored me for more than 10 hours, it felt like treating me as such. She stuck for a long time unable to say an adjective, and Cecile Ruan added, took you as checked baggage. Yes, yes, yes. Jing Yuan got excited and began to slap the table again. Looking back now, I don't know how I endured it. At the same time, Louis Fu made a call. Cecile Ruan was inexplicably panicked when he saw the caller, and had a feeling that he was about to be caught talking badly about people behind his back. She immediately hung up the phone and returned a message. Cecile Ruan, what's going on? Louis Fu, answer the phone. Cecile Ruan, inconvenient, can't you type? Louis Fu, no. Cecile Ruan, no, forget it. And the old things, that's too much. Jing Yuan chattered with a small mouth. As soon as we met before, every time I didn't do anything, he was 8 feet away from me. That feeling was really just, it feels like he thinks you like him. Jing Yuan nodded fiercely, his facial features all wrinkled together. Yes, yes, yes. As if I had to do something to him. Cecile Ruan agreed and nodded calmly. But more than an hour passed, and Cecile Ruan had begun to forcibly doze off, so much so that tears were about to come out. Sister, you have been complaining for more than an hour. There are only a few things that come and go. Louis Fu, he does not know how to appreciate your works. He has no eyes. He has no eyes. He has big trotters. He ignored you. You made him climb high tomorrow, and I haven't even eaten dinner. That's all. After Jing Yuan repeated it so many times, he actually cried on his stomach. I haven't suffered so many grievances since I was a child. Cecile Ruan's back straightened all of a sudden. The woman complained that the man was not terrible, and the terrible thing was that she cried, so that there was no end in 3 or 4 hours. Sober, Cecile Ruan immediately took out his phone and messaged Louis Fu. Cecile Ruan, no, you come to me now. The woman you cry will end up by yourself, why torture me?
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to our channel for more captivating illustrated romance audiobooks. Don't miss out on our latest releases and be part of our growing community. Hit that subscribe button and embark on an enchanting journey with us.